Hey guys, welcome to week 4. Today we will be discussing progress reports. Um, this visual kind of indicates kind of what we'll be talking about, and it kind of harkens back to the visual I did for the proposals to kind of see where we're at in the project. So, welcome back after your week of research. You should have done 5 background research sources. You should have looked at your survey results by now, kind of accumulating over the week. So now, your job is to give me an update on what's going on, which is the gist of progress reports. They do resemble proposals in the structure, and they essentially do have the same structure in terms of headlines. And there's a great example on page 475 of the progress report. And in the syllabus, I articulate specifically what headings are required, and be absolutely sure to follow those headings requirements, because those are absolutely mandatory. I will dock points for not having those headings. So the great thing about the textbook is it kind of follows that same scenario throughout the entire documentation cycle. So it goes from introductory memos to proposals to progress reports to final reports. So it's kind of good to kind of see the same content and to see how these authors kind of transition from the proposal to the progress report, and etc. So essentially, the purpose of a progress report is to let me know what's going on. Right? So if you think about it in the workplace, you're assigned a project, maybe it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe it's 4 months, who knows. You're going to have to give your supervisor or your manager or the advisory team some sort of sense of where you're at, right? So you're not just kind of going AWOL on them. And progress reports are the documents that should instill confidence in your supervisors that you still know what you're doing, and that you can still be trusted. And the way you do that is by discussing in depth the research that you have done thus far and provide a realistic and clear vision of what you have left to do. So that's why this red line is right here. So in the entire project cycle, from the beginning to the end, the progress report is kind of the midway point. So if you recall, when I was doing the proposal, I did the red line just about right here. It was kind of near the beginning. You did enough, but there's still kind of a lot of uncertainty. Now you have half in the rearview mirror. So you've actually done some research. You've conducted the survey, so you can give me updates on those tasks. You've found 5 sources for the background research. You can update and integrate those into the document. So like I said, the model they use in the textbook is a pretty good one. So if you identified like 5 or 6 tasks that you're going to do, and let's say you've done 3 of them, talk about how they kind of complete and what you have left to do. So it's pretty much in the middle document. Like the best way I can explain progress reports is what have I already done and what do I have left to do. And in both those things, you're going to try and instill confidence in the manager. And that's the common theme that I've been talking about is the purposes of these reports aren't just busy work, right? Sometimes when you're writing a progress report, just trust me that I got this. But it's more than that. You have to have a documentation trail. You have to provide updates about what you're doing to make sure that if your manager wants to correct you or redirect you, but also for them to give them peace of mind that, hey, this individual knows what they're doing, they've conducted substantial research at the point that they should have, and they're on track. So the document is very much in that vein. So in a way, it's giving an account for what you've done. So the background research that you did last week for the 5 sources, you want to integrate that research into this progress report to show that you've done research, not only that you found the 5 sources, but that you've read those 5 sources and that you've thought about this. So I would have already graded your background research. And that was kind of an exercise in research. Now you're actually going to reveal how that research has kind of allowed your ideas to move forward. So in the introduction, you're going to cover the sources, give updates on it. So in the introduction, you want to integrate the sources to give more context, because in the original proposal, you didn't really have much external sources to go on. It was just kind of your ideas and the cases that are driving the context. Now it's the actual sources that are helping you write that summary. So you want to integrate those sources into the summary, integrate those sources into your current findings, as a way to show that you've done them, essentially, that you've done that research. Same goes for the survey. So by this point, during this week, as you're writing the progress reports, you're also going to analyze the data that you've got, which is survey responses. So what you want to do is you want to take a look at all your responses. You want to take a look at all the survey responses that you got. And you're probably going to have a feeling like, okay, what do I do with this information? How do I frame this? How do I gain any sort of meaning from this data? Especially the interview questions. So the quantitative data, because you have 5 quantitative questions, if they're asked correctly, you can visualize some of the answers. Let's say, 10 out of 18 respondents said that they would be in complete agreement of switching the BS or the BS and IDS to 1 in English technical writing, for example. And you can visualize that and insert bar graphs and things like that. But with the qualitative responses, the two kind of open-ended responses, you're going to have 36 different responses, ideally 18 times 2. So you're going to have a wealth of text there, and you're going to be like, how do I interpret this? How do I analyze this? And what that's called coding in discourse analysis. Well, what it is you're looking for themes. So read through the text carefully, and one strategy I like to do is to take maybe 2 or 3 different colors of highlighters. So identify themes, right? So let's say if you're doing the transferring from a BS and IDS to a BS in English technical communication, you know that some themes might be uncertainty or marketability or English studies, like the nature of what English is. Those are kind of themes that kind of dominate that conversation, especially marketability. So let's use that example. So marketability is the theme that people would talk about. And you also want to think about what your questions are, because your questions are also going to help drive the theme as well. So I'll take a yellow highlighter and I'll read through all 36 responses and I'll highlight the parts of the text that talk about marketability. And then I'll take a green highlighter and talk about the parts of the text that talk about English. And I'll take a pink highlighter or whatever and use it to highlight the parts of the text that talk about uncertainty or interdisciplinary or whatever your predetermined themes are. Usually 3 to 4 is pretty good. You could do 2 to 3 as well. And what that allows you to do is it allows the text, which is kind of amorphous and overwhelming to begin with, and it starts to kind of self-categorize, and you can start to kind of make assumptions and make assertions based upon what people are talking about. What are the dominant themes? What are the dominant concerns? What things keep coming up over and over again? And that's really up to you. So it's like you're reading a text as if you were in a literature class and trying to analyze the main themes and the common tropes and the ideas and like close reading of it. But this time you're doing it with primary research. So use those same principles that you may or may not have varying degrees of experience in, and try and make sense of the text. And that's challenging, but that's an exciting challenge because you have data in front of you, and that's extremely exciting. Try to make sense of it in your own way that you think would be meaningful given the report that you're going to have to write. So that's kind of my challenge to you in terms of that, because if the questions were done well, if the quantitative questions were done well, then you'll be able to visualize those or say 16 out of 18 people are in complete agreement that we should switch from an IDS to a BS in English, whatever it is. And you can visualize that, or you can state it as a fact or whatever. But then the second half of the progress report is things you have left to do. So maybe you have looked at the quantitative questions, but let's say you haven't got to the coding just yet, or you haven't got to the analyzing of the text just yet. Let me know. So be frank. Be honest. If you haven't done a lot of work on it, tell me you haven't done a lot of work on it. Don't lie, right? Let's say your red bar is kind of maybe closer to here. Tell me where that is. So if your red bar is closer to here and you feel maybe inadequate in terms of the amount of research you've done, then you have a lot more convincing of me to say, look, I'm on it. The next 2 weeks, I'm going to finish these tasks, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you did more research than you expected, then be really realistic about maybe other things that you can do, or why you had such a good time getting that far. So a progress report is really just your chance to share struggles, to be honest, be frank and clear, because that's what a manager is going to want. They're going to rather have you be honest than lie about something you did, and then they're going to ask for that thing and be like, I don't have it. That's going to reflect more poorly on you than actually having a red line be here. So identify with your needle, because each red line is going to be different. So as this needle kind of moves along, take some time, take stock, maybe visualize, maybe brainstorm it out on paper, what you've done, what you have left to do, and provide for me a good sense about where you're at and instill confidence in me that I know that you can do this for the rest of the time. So that's what I'm looking for. In terms of the chapters, Chapter 7, having you read that now as you're kind of thinking about organizing your final report. So that's a good chapter. We'll probably return to that. Chapter 17, only focus on the progress reports part. You don't have to read the entire chapter, just the progress reports part, because that's the most relevant for you. And it goes into the formatting. Page 474 has a really good discussion. It's in a blue guidelines box. It talks about tone, the tone that you want to have with the progress report. And it's really talking about being overstated versus realistic. And you want to maintain realistic. So it goes back to this clarity, honesty part of technical writing. This is part of the ethics of technical writing, right? You don't want to lie, you don't want to overstate. This isn't about hyperbole. This isn't about kind of being overly confident. People are usually skeptical of overconfidence. So be realistic about what you can do. This is a 6-week summer class, so you can't change the world, right? So just be modest, realistic about what you can do, and that's really the essence of a progress report. So have fun in analyzing your data as you kind of do that simultaneously, concurrently through the week with writing the progress reports. I'm looking forward to seeing them, and email me if you have any questions.